Hello and welcome to another Lord's Day teaching. I hope you've had a good week, and I pray that God has blessed you and I'm sure He has in one way or another. Even if you've had a hard week, God's presence will have been with you, and so that's a good thing. Glad to have you joining us today. We're just going to jump right into our teaching. This is meant as a bit of an augment to the Sunday morning service, but even as a standalone, I hope it's really useful to you. But let's pray and ask that God will make it useful. So, dear Father, thank you so much for today. And for each person that's watched this video, help these words be useful in Jesus' name. Amen. Matthew chapter 8, verse 18 to 23. And we're going to read that, and then I'm going to expand on it. But I'm going to give a little context as well. Well, let's read it for now. So it says in verse 18, it says, "Now when Jesus saw a crowd around him, he gave orders to depart to the other side of the sea. Then a scribe came and said to him, 'Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go.' Jesus said to him, 'The foxes have holes and the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head.' Another of the disciples said to him, 'Lord, permit me first to go and bury my father.' But Jesus said to him, 'Follow me, and allow the dead to bury their own dead.' When he got into the boat, his disciples followed him." So, interesting little story. I do have to give you some context to it because it'll help us understand the story. As I was studying for this in order to give the teaching, there's a certain word in that, and what I just read there, there's one word that really kind of jumps out at me. And I think it's very key to understanding this. When we look at this text and his answer to these people, it can seem very odd to us. Like we can look at it and go, this scribe saying, "I'll follow you anywhere," and Jesus gives this very, Ridley sounding answer. And the other guy is saying, "I'll follow you, Jesus, but first let me go bury, have a funeral." And to us, it's just things like, why is Jesus telling him not to do that? And so it can be kind of confusing. And as we look at the text and try and figure out what is Jesus teaching through this, we can't fully understand that unless we focus on one word. And that one word is really important to understanding this. But that word, you wouldn't necessarily think to look at it unless you think of the context. So let me explain. We won't read all the context, but let me give you the context. Just so that we can follow the flow of thought in Matthew's gospel. Now, Matthew wrote this gospel. He's telling the true story of Jesus' life. This is all true, but he's telling it with a certain emphasis. So in the telling, he's emphasizing certain things that happened to make a point. And so what is he doing? Well, if we go back to the end of chapter 7, that's the end of what we call the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus had given this huge sermon. It was really amazing. And at the end of that, Matthew, in telling the story, he says that the crowds were amazed at Jesus' teaching because he was different than the scribes and the Pharisees and those, in that when he taught, he taught as someone who had authority over the subject, over what he was saying. He taught as someone, that was the word he used, he taught as someone who had authority. And then it goes into chapter 8, and it tells a couple stories. It tells about how Jesus comes, and there's this leper that comes to him, and he's like, "Lord, if you're willing, you can heal me." And Jesus is like, I'm willing. And so there's this sense of, if God is willing, right? If Jesus is willing, there's like it's up to you in authority. And then the centurion comes, and he says, "I have a sick servant," and Jesus says, "I'll come heal him." And the centurion says, "No, you don't have to. I'm a person under authority. I recognize authority. All you have to do is say the word." And so once again, emphasizing Jesus' authority. So Jesus says, "Okay, you've got great faith. Let it be done as you thought." And so there's this sense of, once again, authority, Jesus' authority over these things. Then he comes to Peter's home, and Peter's mother-in-law is sick, and he heals her, and all the people in the town come after they find out Jesus is there, and he healed her, healed her. And then all the people come with their sick and the demon possessed that were with them, and it says Jesus healed them all and cast out the demons with a word, right? And the emphasis there is not just to say, look how powerful Jesus is, but of course that's part of it. But to say, look, with a word, not just with with his little finger, or with a simple treatment, but with simply a word, like by stating his will, he accomplishes his will. So the amazing amount of authority, once again. So in each of these things, we're seeing that happen. And then we have this little story and this kind of riddly little statements. But once again, to get the full context, what comes immediately after, which we'll look at in a future sermon, but what immediately comes after is the story of they get in the boat and they go out into the water, and this great storm, it says, comes down on them. And it's a huge storm, and Jesus is sleeping in the boat. the disciples are trying to fight the waves, and they were feeling swamped, and they wake Jesus up and said the waves are overtaking us, and he's like, what are you so, my paraphrase, but what are you so worried about? Why do you have such little faith? And then he rebukes the storm stops, and the disciples marvel, it says. They marvel, and they say to each other, what kind of man is this, that even the wind and the storm obeys him, right? So there's that authority again, even over nature, right? And then the next story, they arrive on the shore on the other side. These two demon-possessed men come down to meet them out of the tombs, and it says that these men were so violent, so extremely violent, that people couldn't even pass by that region. They basically owned that landscape because nobody would go near them. They were so violent. And they come down the beach to meet Jesus. And the demons that within them, that are inside of them, call out to Jesus, and they recognize him, and they say, what are you doing here? It's before the time. Are you going to cast us out? And they say, well, cast us out into the pigs. And Jesus simply says the word, go. And they go into the pigs, and the pigs rush into the water and die. And it's quite we'll look at that in a future sermon. But the emphasis here in the story is he just says go, right? Like, he has the authority even over the powerful demonic beings that are able to corrupt these men to become such violent scourge on the landscape. But Jesus has the authority with a word. They can't do a thing to him. He's completely in charge of even that extreme situation. And so that's all wrapping this little piece that we're looking at today, where these two people come up to Jesus and they want to go with him, and he says these sort of riddles to them, these little statements that you got to think, what is he saying to them? So what's the word that popped out to me? Maybe it pops out to you now after I say all the context, but to me in this text, the word that pops out right away in verse 18, right? Now when Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to depart to the other side of the sea. He didn't, ask who would like to go. He didn't, get a committee together and say, what do you think, guys? And he didn't get his disciples together and say, what do you think? Should we go over there? Should we take a boat? There was none of that. There was, would you mind? Could someone please, I need a lift. There was none of that. A lot of popular things people do now with Jesus is they like to make him out as if he's just sort of this common guy that sits next to everybody and very doesn't want anybody to ever treat him specially or anything. And it's not really quite the Jesus of the Bible, the one who gives orders. He says to them, we're going over there. That's what we're going to do. Get the boat ready. And so when he gives the orders, then this story happens. And that's important. It's a little nod to us, a little keyword to us to let us know this is still about authority. Just like the rest of the context, we're still talking about the same subject. And so these guys come, and they say, hey, I'd like to come. I'd like to be part of this. And he answers them in such a way that it puts them on the spot, and they have to make a decision about what they're going to do. Now here's the lesson. I'm going to give you the punchline of the whole lesson. And I'll probably come back to it later, but here's the punchline, so to speak. It's not a joke, but here's the, whatever you call it. Here's the key. If you aren't able to obey the simple little orders that Jesus gives, how will you ever handle the storm or the demons? How are you going to handle the big things if you can't be faithful in the little things? And that's kind of the story here. Right? There's these people that are saying, I'll follow you. And Jesus is like, do you know what the cost of that is? And this other person says, I'll follow you after I do this. And Jesus is like, you're putting that ahead of following me? Is that what you're doing? And he is not allowing people to fail at the soft challenge. Like this is simple. If you can't do this simple thing, what are you going to do in the middle of the lake when the storm comes? And what are you going to do on the other side when the demons come? And we often get confused about this. We do. We think, oh God, I'm willing to give my life for you, right? But not my Sunday morning. Well, okay. What makes you think you're willing to give your life for him if you're not willing to give your Sunday morning to him? It's a funny thing, but those soft challenges, those soft, easy things are often the areas of biggest battle in our faith because we don't want to do those little things. And, we think we'll be great in the big struggle. But how can we know that when we're not even able to do a simple thing, right? it's funny sometimes when kids are growing up, they're like this. They want to do something. They want to go all the way on something. Like, Dad, I can take the car. And it's like, well, let's start with just driving down the street. And no, they want to have the full set of authorities granted to them before they've proven themselves in the small things. And that's kind of what this story is about. But let's go into it a little deeper and see kind of how Jesus is bringing this thought to these people and to us as a result. And I call these soft challenges, right? There's a soft challenge. There will be lots of soft challenges to your faith, to your following Jesus. If you, like me, consider yourself a disciple of Jesus and you're trying to follow him with your whole life, you're trying to devote yourself to him, and you're devoting yourself to him, then there will be big tests of our faith. There's going to be all kinds of things. There'll be many trials of our faith. Big, some things really big. And I've had those moments, really huge tests where it's like, oh God, I have to rely on you. But the bigger challenge actually kind of comes in all the little challenges, the little soft challenges of how you handle your tongue, how you handle your desires, how you handle your daily routine. The little things that you do to devote yourself to Christ become actually a regular and a very important testing of our faith. See, what happens is these guys, for instance, as examples for all of us, they come to Jesus and basically they're saying, Jesus, I want to follow you, right? But they want to fit him in. They want to find a way to fit him into the life they have. And it may not be obvious at first, but that's what I'm going to suggest. That's what they're doing. They're trying to find a way. Is there a way that, Jesus, I can be a follower of you and yet still have my life the way I want it? And that's what he kind of challenges them on here, right? So the scribe comes, and he's asking Jesus, he's saying, I'll follow you. Now, what he's really doing here, just to understand the culture, he's come to a rabbi. He says the word teacher, right? Rabbi. He's come to a rabbi, and he's basically said, I want to become one of your students. In other words, I want to join your party and become one of your students. Let me into your school, as it were. And so I'll follow you wherever you go. That's the idea of what that is about. But Jesus sees something in this man. Now, we're not told the whole story of the man's life, so we don't see all of it. But somehow Jesus sees in this man this issue, so he raises it. And he says, well, listen, foxes have holes. Birds have nests. So you think about these very mobile animals, foxes that roam the landscape, birds that fly all over the place, but yet they have a base they come back to. They have a place where they lay their head. They have a den or a nest. He said, I don't have that. My journey in the world is a place of not nesting. The nesting tendency is normal for humans. It's for all creatures. Foxes and birds even do it. And so there's this understandable tendency in humanity to build a nest, to build my life, to build the comforts of life, to build the safeties of life, to build a home, a place that is mine. And Jesus wasn't speaking against that altogether. He's not saying that. But what he is saying is this, that following Jesus is a thing that actually means you don't nest. You have to be able to not. Now, we know Jesus' followers had homes and stuff. It wasn't saying everybody had to give up their homes. But what he was saying is they basically had to not make them their homes, right? Does that sound confusing? It is a little bit. But the idea is that when we follow Jesus and we try to fit him into our nest, we are not following Jesus anywhere. We're asking Jesus to come and be part of our life. And a lot of people do this. They want to still have all the things of life. They still want to have this, they still want to have that, whether it be things like a house or whether it be things like a routine, something regular every day, or whatever it is. And they want to find a way. He's like, I want to follow Jesus, so I want to find a way to fit him in so that I can still have all these things that I like to have. I want to be able to have my summer vacation, and I want to be able to have my Christmas dinner, and I still want to be able to do whatever it is. And you have all the things of life, all those nice little comfortable den things, those comfortable nest things, ways that you just like your life to be. And you want Jesus as part of all that. And Jesus just says, no, it's not the way it's going to be. If you're following me, all of that stuff, enjoy the blessings whenever you have them. But he found himself in the next story in a boat. And where did he lay his head? In a boat during a storm. Because the more important thing is doing the will of the Father. And for us, doing the will of Jesus, following Jesus. And the more important thing is pursuing God's call in our life, and being what God wants us to do in the temporariness of this life we're in. But we so often want to just simply have our life here on earth. And we want Jesus to be part of it because we kind of want him to bless it. We want him to take all of the nest we've made and bless it. And this isn't to criticize, but you know that old country decoration thing, God bless this home. That's good. God bless this home. I pray that too. But in the end, we really have to be willing to not even have a home and follow Jesus. Our devotion has to be at such a level that the home is a temporary thing in our heads, in our hearts. That it's just a temporary thing of this life. I'll follow Jesus, and if tomorrow Jesus takes my home from me, all right, fine. I follow Jesus. This world isn't my home. I don't have a place to lay my head. Okay, fine. I'll go ever. This scribe said, I'll follow you anywhere. There's almost a little sense there of, God, do you want to move to this town and we'll set up shop there? I'm all for it. You want to move over there? Sure, I'll go over there. We'll set up shop there. I'll buy a house there. And it's like Jesus is saying, a better question is, will you follow me everywhere? Wherever we find ourselves, will you follow me? Wherever that takes us in the next moment, will you go there with me? Now, it's a bit of a metaphor, but it really is an important one. It's a small, soft challenge to the authority of Jesus in your life. Are you willing and able to say, Jesus, I will not have the trappings of life, if that's what you say? If you say I shouldn't have this or I shouldn't have that, fine. I'll give those up. I'll follow you anywhere, everywhere. And that's the idea. So then the second one, I won't go further. The main service will do that. But the second one is the whole idea of the person who comes and says, he's going to come with Jesus. And he says, but first, let me go and bury my father. Sounds like such a reasonable request. His father has died, and he's basically saying, I want to have a funeral. And Jesus is like, no, follow me. Let the dead bury their dead. And it sounds so harsh, and it's really hard for us to understand that. But the fact that we find that hard to understand shows just how out of sync we are with the idea of following Jesus. Jesus is saying to this man, you're going to put something first, right? Like, you'll follow me, but first you'll do something else. No, that's not the way it works with Jesus. It's Jesus first. You follow him first. The devotion we give to Jesus is the top of the priority list. It's above everything on the priority list. That's what it's supposed to be. And the soft challenge we have in our life, before we ever see the storms or the demon-possessed people or any of that, before we face those big trials, the little trials of putting Jesus first in the routines of life, in the traditions of life, and in the culture that we live in, that's a real challenge. It's a soft one. It's not as obvious. It's not big and fiery, but it's a real challenge. And so many people who want to follow Jesus fail in this challenge. First, Jesus, let me do this. First, I want to do that. A real challenge, and this is with our money. I tithe. I'm a person, I believe in the biblical principle of tithing. That's the giving the first 10% of everything I earn. Before I do anything else, I give that to God. And it's first. On purpose. It's not second. I don't get around to it. I don't put it on my to-do list. I get the paycheck and it goes. I before I have a chance to even think about it, I'm sending that. And that's an example, right? But a lot of us, we don't even give God any of our money, but let alone give it first. And it's an interesting thing. And there's many things. I just use that one example. There's many things in our life that we put first, ahead of Jesus, ahead of following Jesus. And we find this challenge rising up whenever we feel this sense of, oh yeah, I'll do that for you, God, but no, I got to do this, so once I get this sort of taken care of, I'll do that. And it's, there's time and place for everything. But when we find that attitude of something first before I serve Jesus, it's a real indicator of what our priority list is. And that soft challenge is a real challenge. And if we can't conquer it, what makes us think we'll win in the bigger challenges of persecution, for instance, the bigger storms of life, or the bigger assaults like the demon-possessed people? Well, like what happens when Satan attacks your life full scale? You think you're going to be able to stand that when you're not able to prioritize Jesus on something as simple as how you organize your day? Or what words you will and won't say, what movies you will and won't watch, etc. And so it's a real challenge. And that's what he's doing with these people. So we could say it really sounds like Jesus is being unreasonable here. It doesn't sound like that's fair that Jesus would say that to these people. And we have that instinct inside of ourselves when we hear this story, especially the one with the funeral. I don't know about you, but for me, especially the one with the funeral, it's like, why can't he just go and bury his dad? But there's a lesson there that's really important. When we think it sounds unreasonable, then we got to ask ourselves why. If you think Jesus' expectation on these two men was a problem, ask yourselves why. See, the whole test is set up there. Jesus gives orders. This is what we're going to do. We're going to get in the boat. Get the boat ready. We're going to get in the boat. These two people come, and the test is given to them. It's a simple test. And at the end of it, the last verse we read there, what does it say? It says, when he got into the boat, when Jesus got into the boat, his disciples followed him. Right? Now, these guys had the choice. They could get in the boat, or they could not get in the boat. Jesus gave the orders. This is what he wants. This is his will. He went and he got in the boat, and his disciples, whoever they were, got in the boat. Jesus didn't twist anybody's arm. He gave the orders. And whoever gets in the boat, they're his disciples. Getting in that boat is up to us. Jesus offers it. He says, you can have this, you can be a disciple. Get in the boat. It's that simple. But here's the thing. I'm getting in the boat. I'm going and I'm getting in the boat. That's what I'm doing. And if you're going to follow me, then get in the boat. You're not, it's not going to be setting up a new home. Don't go and pack a U-Haul. Just get in the boat. And no, if you're going to go do the funeral, we're going to be setting sail. And you can stay here with your funeral, if that's what it's going to be. But if you want to follow me, get in the boat. And if you think that sounds so unreasonable, then ask yourself this. What makes it unreasonable? Why is it unreasonable? Okay? And what you'll find yourself doing is you'll start to say things like, well, they're asking for such a small thing. Right? Well, they're not. Jesus isn't saying they can't have their small thing. They can have it. Right? They just can't have it and follow him. So if they want their small thing, they can have it. He's not saying no to the small thing. He's just saying, if you're going to follow me, follow me. And, well, why can't we have both? Why can't we follow him and still have this? Because then you're just trying to fit Jesus into your life, aren't you? Like, what is it that makes us think that Jesus doesn't have authority over something, right? Like, that he doesn't have authority, for instance, over whether or not we have a home, or he doesn't have authority over whether or not we should go and have this particular ritual or this cultural expression or whatever. Why do we think that Jesus shouldn't have authority over every single thing in our lives? When Jesus says, you have an option, I present you the option, you can follow me. I call you, come and follow me. Come and follow me if you wish. I'll leave it up to you. But if you follow me, I'm in charge and I'm giving orders. And if you're following me, then get in the boat with me and let's go. And if you don't want to, fine. Why do we think he doesn't have the right to do that? Why do we think that we have some sort of entitlement to following Jesus on our grounds, as we want to make it, that we get to write the contract? He's Lord. He has the authority. Jesus isn't obligated to make it easy for us. Sometimes we think that way. We think that, if I'm going to follow Jesus, then my life shouldn't be too hard. There shouldn't be suffering. There shouldn't be any kind of difficulty. Jesus should make this easy for me. And he isn't obligated to make anything easy for you. He's got his agenda. He's the Lord, and he says this is what we're doing. And if you want to follow me, obey. Here's my orders. Obey. It's going to be hard. There's going to be suffering. There's going to be difficulties. There's going to be persecution. The world's going to hate you. There's going to be things you're going to have to give up. There's going to be places you can't lay your head down. There's going to be times when you're just going to find yourself so unsettled. But this world right now. And Jesus promises to all of his disciples, at the end of the age, I will come and reward you. You will be with me forever in paradise. So it's worth it. Why do we then think Jesus is so unreasonable to make any demands on us, or to make that certain demands are off limits to him? Anytime we ever think that, then we don't understand Jesus' authority. We don't understand Jesus' authority. If we think there's any part of our life that Jesus should accommodate, then we don't understand his authority, and we're not ready to walk in it. We're not ready for the boat on the stormy sea, and we're not ready for the other shore where the demons are. We're not even ready to be getting in the boat. And that's the issue. And so think about the things in your life I would be a follower of Jesus as long as, or I would be a follower of Jesus, but I would still be this, right? Whether it be your plans for your future or your identity. And this is big in our world right now. Who you think you are, who you want to be, or what parts of your life, what practices and things you want to keep. And Jesus says you got to give those up. This is, you got to follow me, and it means giving up all that you are. And so famously, Jesus said you have to lose your life, as it were, to find it. You've got to be willing to give up your whole life. And if you're willing to do that and follow Jesus, then yeah, you'll get in the boat. And yeah, you'll see the stormy sea, but you'll also see Jesus calm the storm. And yeah, you'll meet the demoniacs on the shore, but you'll also see Jesus cast the demons out. And you'll see the amazing things, the great trials. You'll be ready for them. But you can't be ready for them until you're ready to be devoted in the soft challenges to your faith, in the simple things of life. No one has the right to be a disciple of Jesus. But Jesus gives us all the opportunity and the gift to be disciples, if we so choose, to submit ourselves to his lordship. Whenever we find ourselves resisting that, it's only because something Jesus has authority over is something we don't want him to have authority over, something contrary to our plans. It's always a lordship issue, isn't it? Everything kind of comes down to that in the end, doesn't it? Who's really going to be in charge, you or Jesus? That's the lesson today. Lord, bless us in this and help us to be good disciples. Help us to be willing to get in the boat, no matter what the cost, and then build our faith, I pray, in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you, and we'll see you next time. Enjoy your week, and may God just fully and richly give his presence to you as you work in it.